ideas around rearing children, right? And how people of color raise their children. And I said, we're probably one of the only cultures that's had to learn how to raise our own children.
Without ever being taught.
Well, not only that, but remember, other people were raising our children.
Right.
And we were coexisting with our children in a way to protect them.
But not living with them. It's not the same.
Right. And then when we get the opportunity to raise them, now we have to learn some new tools and strengthen some new muscles. But guess what? We are still raising our children to protect them because this society still, right? We are still having conversations about how to get home safe. And we are still having to do a little bit of covering, if you will, so that they are able to make it home, or teaching them how to show up in the world so that other people feel safe around them. Right.
And here's the thing, and most people don't understand, you're not growing if you are not changing the narrative of the reason you're having the conversation.
Right.
Every parent, I get it from the dawns of children to parents, has said, be safe out there. Be careful out there of the saber-tooth tiger. Well, they went away. And so parents are now saying, be safe of the moving horses. We went to cars. Be safe with cars and trains and buses. Black people are having the same. The narrative isn't changing because of the time. Saber-tooth tiger, horses, car. We're saying, be careful of the other race from killing you.
That's it.
I mean, it's not a different animal.
Imagine if it was just the car we had to worry about, or just the tiger, right? It's not. So that conversation looks different coming from us. And I think that part of the reason that the disenfranchisement is still so deeply rooted is because it's never really been discussed.
No.
It hasn't been discussed in an authentic, safe, and vulnerable way.
And there is you're going to get very distinctive answers by safe and vulnerable. If I feel safe, then I can allow myself to fully express the pain that I have been in. Not that I'm going to be in, not that what someone told me I was in. I'm talking about being safe in what I am going through.
Right. And then how do we connect to that? Because we have so many devices that help us forget, so many coping mechanisms, so many escapes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then we go through life, and all of a sudden what happens? We get triggered. We have no idea where the hell that just came from. Right.
And
it's because we're not having those conversations, because sometimes in those safe spaces, when you're having those conversations and the triggers come up, there are people around you that can work you through your triggers. Right. It's very different when you're having one in the workspace and someone's triggered you at work, and now you cussing everybody out, and now you just lost your job. You've been escorted out by security. You got to put your badge on it. Like that's a very different experience than having the conversation in a place with people that love you and care for you and know how to support you and have a similar experience.
See,
very different.
It's very different. Now, when we can, and thank you for coming on the show, because I love having conversations with you, because we just move. It's got to be organic. For me, it always has to be organic. It can't be planned and all this stuff. But when you talk about safe and knowing how and to moving forward, isn't that transitioning that people don't get? People don't know how to live that way.
I do believe, yes, to answer your question. And I think that, and it's not that people don't want to, they just don't know how.
See, thank you.
Yeah, it's just that they don't know how. So again, here we go with teaching each other, creating a safe space, allowing vulnerability for people to honestly say, I don't know how. And as a coach, I have these conversations with people every single day. And I'm always helping them to unpack all the crap that's been piled on top of them by people that don't understand them, or people that have projected their stuff onto them. So when you're when you're having to climb up from out of all this everybody else's stuff, you rarely get a chance to really examine your own,
which then becomes the power of who you are.
It does, but it's work, and it's work that people have to be willing to do. It's work that people need to understand that has to happen, because for you to say you want to transform, right? Everything else in the world, in society, even in nature, their transformation is already predestined. The cocoon we know will transform into a butterfly.
Let me give you a pushback, meaning I'm going to give you a life situation going on right now.
Okay.
You have all these sisters who...
I don't know all the answers. Let me just say that, but
I don't care. You have these sisters, siblings, who have children now, their own small ones. And one of the sisters is dating a man who the sisters don't approve of because he's not all that.
What does that mean?
They don't like him, period. Like, there's issues, there's traumatic drama issues and traumatic issues, trauma issues that he as a Black male is not dealing with.
So how does that show up in the relationship?
It becomes volatile, not a good environment. So the sister's saying, leave him. And if you don't, we sort of don't support you in your thing anymore. My question is when people don't really realize that there's stuff holding them down, and you have others telling them or sharing with them or coaching them saying, girl, you're in a bad way, that's still a vision they don't see. That seems to be not understood by the others. You know what I mean? So how do you have people help see what they're not seeing in what's being transpired? Because the one that's in the situation, it's not seeing that she or him or they are in a bad situation. The ones on the outside seeing them are saying, you are in a bad situation.
Well, isn't that always how that works, though?
Yes. When you're old enough, it's the same song.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things. I mean, how are the sisters having the conversation with her? Are they berating her and downgrading her for being in this raggedy relationship? Or are they sitting her down and saying, listen, we love you and we know what you deserve and we know what you desire. And it doesn't look like this. You know what I mean? So how are they having the conversation?
I think the scale is going left and right.
Okay.
So it is definitely not a one pendulum scale. It is swinging.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I don't know about that circumstance, but just, I mean, I would just, if it was my sister,
right,
I would sit her down and have a conversation with her. And, and then the rest is on her. Like, be very clear that this is, I'm sorry. How do I turn it? Okay. Be very clear that this is, a situation that you're willing to continue to deal with, and the repercussions may be X, Y, and Z, because here's the thing. I don't talk to boyfriends. I don't know you like that. And in case I ever have to cut you or punch you in the face, I'm not your friend. Right. So my conversation is going to be with my sister. It's not going to be with him.
Right. It's always with your sister. And then I think, like you said, if this is what you're going to go through, there's some repercussions. I'm just letting you know how I feel about this.
Yeah.
That's all. Right.
That's it. Now, if it gets violent or, violent and all that stuff, then that's when you call the police. I would call the police. You lay your hands on my sister, I'm calling the police. And if you do it again, then I'm calling the boys. So figure it out.
You know what? You're your sister. I'm telling you, you're not the only one that said that. Most people I'm calling my boys before I call the police.
Well, here's something that I've always been taught. You do things you go through the proper channels the first time.
Okay.
That way, if anything ever happens with the boys, they can't say you never let us know. We weren't aware. We didn't know this was happening.
Yeah.
No, you knew. There's a paper trail, right? I like paper trails first. That because that supports when I get ignorant, I got a paper trail to support my ignorance.
So going back to the house Negro and the field Negro, is that ignorance?
I think that's just lack of information and education. Because you have people that just really choose
Don't believe?
well, they just feel like we've come such a long way. Those things are not still relevant in our lives. They don't show up in our lives. And that's just lack of it's just people don't understand. So if you and I are having this conversation, I'm sure we've had this conversation with other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are actually professionals in this arena.
Correct.
That have proof of how these things still are a part of our lives and have to do with the way we show up in the world, how we see ourselves, our culture, right? Our
Correct.
Community, which reminds me, I'm gonna circle back because I have a question for you about that. So we have been privileged enough to continue these conversations, these solution-oriented conversations.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people that are not having these conversations at all. So when you bring it to them, they're like, I don't get it.
I don't buy that 2020 on or 2010 on. I have a hard time allowing that statement to go unless you're 15.
Again, you'd be surprised. I mean, people, again, we're talking about coping mechanisms. We're
Yes.
talking about people that were, depending on where the kind of family or environment they're born in, they don't even talk about the Black experience in this country.
So, okay, wait a minute. We can pick a shooting, we can pick a killing, we can pick a, driving while Black, we can pick
any of those things,
right? Yeah. Getting coffee while Black.
Breathing while Black. Okay.
Breathing.
Yeah.
At the day it happens, right? When it happens on blah, 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 9 a.m., 10 a.m., all the social media lights up, the news lights up around your town, your city, and says, this just happened.
Right.
When you get to your next destination or any destination between wakey and sleepy,
okay.
How are you not having that conversation of the incident of the day with someone?
Well, guess what?
Really?
Sometimes people still have the conversation, but guess what? Who are you talking to about it, and what are their views, right?
What
and are you in agreement? Like, yeah, I mean, that's easy for us to say.
Okay.
That's a no-brainer for us. It just like it begs the question, like, what else could you possibly be talking about right now?
What today? I'm not talking about tomorrow.
What's more important?
But today, like right now, like this just happened. What?
I'm gonna tell you something. There has been 400,000 people dead from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They have people in hospitals. My mother's one of them.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, she's still on the ventilator, right? You have people that are sick, kids are sick, teachers are sick. You still have companies that are open. You still have businesses that are open. You still have people out here partying like it is 1999. Like there's nothing going on. So if you are that cavalier about your life, up close and personal, with all the evidence that is, even with the misinformation, there's enough tangible evidence to support that this is a dangerous thing and that we have to show empathy and compassion for each other by protecting ourselves. If we can't have that conversation that's happening in real time, you best believe these are the people that are not interested in engaging in conversations for something that happened 400 years ago.
So we're actually, and I wrote this down, it must have been 2 days ago. I said, because I like to talk about emotions in science. So
okay,
a lot of the things I talk about with the emotions in science and how it affects the body is that maybe we're just missing a question. We're looking for answers, but maybe we just haven't asked the right question where everyone goes, oh, right?
Mm-hmm.
I call it the collective, oh, right?
Right. The aha moment, the
The
collective
aha
aha.
moment.
Right.
So maybe I should be asking more people, what's your thoughts on living? Not your thoughts
Well,
on the person that got shot, this abuse. When it happens that day, right? Instead of saying, what do you think about George Floyd getting his neck knelt on?
mm-hmm.
Instead of asking that question, so I say, hey, what do you think about living? Well, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I just want, do you enjoy life? Do you think life should be led? Do you think you should put it back on the burner? Because that type of will open up, yeah, because maybe they will point to the thing on TV and say, yeah, because this thing today, that really hurts my heart.
Right.
Or maybe they won't say it at all. They say, I really enjoy living. And then you say, don't you think people have the right to live and breathe? Right? You know what I mean? It may
Right.
sound like you're baiting them, but
The right to live and breathe.
right,
So simple.
right. But those are as answered, I think, more freely than what do you think about this incident? Because then they have to put themselves in the
In the
incident.
situation.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and if they are unable to, because of coping mechanisms, because of not talking about it for 400 plus years, that's different than what do you think about living? Because
Right.
I think if you ask economically similar people, they're economically going to have the same answer.
Usually. Yeah.
Usually. But if you
Mm-hmm.
ask them on the same economic level and you ask them about their relationship with their culture, now it starts to be woozy. It's like I don't you want to play
Well, well, here's the
golf
thing.
tomorrow?
Whoever has to answer that question besides us?
In their own country, there are lots, but in the United States, very few. Because
Right.
if you in Cuba, there is classism.
Oh, 100. There's classism around the world. What I mean
Right.
is in the way that it affects us, in the way that we're
Yes.
disenfranchised.
Yes.
Who else has to answer that question? No one.
No.
So let me present this to you, right? And I've had this conversation a couple of times. So there is so you're the perfect one, Dr. Paul. You're the perfect one. Okay. So when we think about, as we talk about transformation, I think one of the biggest things that we as a people consider with transformation is our communities, right? Mm-hmm. Because they are the cradle for, and I don't mean neighborhoods, I mean community,
the community,
right?
Yeah.
So when you look at all the other communities in this country, even your Asian, Hispanic, Latin communities, even African.
Very much so.
Yeah. They all have the tendency to circulate their money in the community. They support each other. You can drive down the Buford Highway and you see schools, banks, doctor's offices, dentists, everything that they need is self-contained. We people of color, that's not our experience. And I know why, but the question is this: those cultures are connected by some tentacles, language, mm-hmm. culture, mm-hmm. and native land, right? Mm-hmm. Right.
We have not.
We don't have any of those things. But if we were to create tentacles that connect us and create so that we can start really having conversations about our community, what that looks like, what it feels like, what it can be for us, what tentacles would you consider, right, for us to connect on? Because if you're Korean and you go to Mexico and you see another Korean, you're talking the same language, where your mama lives, grandma, that you're connected with all that, right? So my question is always when I have these conversations, where are the tentacles that connect us the same way they do around language, food, culture, land,
Well, the comical answer is real quick because I'm goofy. It would be over corn on the cob. It would be. People say, what about chicken or sweet potato? or greens. I'm like, no, because I think the way everyone has a different flavor of how they cook the other stuff.
Everything's different.
Except for corn. So the only thing that unifies one black table and another black table, it's probably the corn.
Well, guess what? Some of us don't eat corn, so it has to be a
But
non-negotiable though. But this is what I'm saying. It's
non-negotiable.
almost impossible. It's almost, you know what I mean? When you think about it, it's like
it is.
I've had very heated debates about this because people say, "Oh, what about language? No. Barbecue? No. Land." I will say this: the Creole culture, woo woo, and the Geechees,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Land,
yeah,
language,
yeah,
culture.
Yes.
They are the only subcultures that I can recall, and maybe no more. Those two subcultures in this country have that.
Yes, period.
Right?
But that unifies it.
Yeah. Until Jim Crow, though, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Because the Geechees, in the Carolinas, and then the ones down in Louisiana, they're a whole different. It's and I've been on both. I've been in the swamp with both, and it's different. Okay. So the sad issue, so what will unify us, because I do believe this, is the realization you have trauma.
Okay. So now we have shared trauma.
So once we get there, it's not about what your
which is very true. That's true.
What your trauma is that we both have some.
Right. So I say that because, as you know, the term shared trauma in the therapeutic world and the coaching world is not a good thing to share trauma, especially as it pertains to relationships and those types of things.
But we do share trauma.
We absolutely do. I agree 100%. But I'm saying in terms of connecting with someone in a romantic way, that's not necessarily beneficial for the relationship. No. But for the sake of this conversation, we do. We have a shared lineage, if you will, right? I saw a new term. I asked about it on my page yesterday. It's called ADOS. Ascended. Hold on. I'm about to tell you. So I posted on my page. I was like, do y'all know what this is? Because this is the first time I'm hearing of it and I'm not familiar with it and yada, yada, yada. So basically, I was in Clubhouse and there was a group and they used the term ADOS. So apparently ADOS is American Descendant of Slaves.
Right.
Never heard of that.
I've heard the term. I've never heard of it. I never heard the acronym.
So ADOS, so that's what they're using. So some of the millennial, right? So on the page, people are expressing, some people are like, it's fine. Some people are like, no, I don't like the term. It is designed to omit the Caribbean, culture. And I mean, again, we have a thing or a term and everybody has a completely different experience. Think about Kwanzaa, same thing. Here's something that was created for us to gather around and create some camaraderie and some familiarity with ourselves.
It got so much pushback.
Oh, right. So it's like, how do we, and they want to talk about Dr. Karanga's personal life. Okay, that's fine. But listen, how do we get to the point to where, how do we have these conversations?
We're gonna keep beating that. I think it is the shared trauma. That's
you're the first person that said that, and I agree. So I guess we would have to determine what that looks like in terms of the conversation, right? That it's not a.
But what is sad is I think we will have to premise it. And I think that's what you're saying. We almost have to put it like a disclaimer, like saying, okay, the one thing that unifies is shared trauma. Shared trauma does not mean I associate my trauma with yours. It means that I understand I have trauma too, and you too have trauma.
That historically and ancestrally, we have the same experience.
So even if you're from the Caribbean, even if you're from any place else,
no matter where you're from, because it's just a boat stop.
Yep.
The boat stopped here.
Yep. Yeah. This is trauma. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yeah, for sure.
And which is what could unify us as human beings, because every culture, except for white culture, has had, so we can look at a different culture, like what we're talking about is England white, because England white did horrific things on the Irish and the Scottish. It's the poisoning of their land. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
instituted,
European.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
They
those
do.
Europeans, outside, so everyone else has trauma. And
Right.
even people I've talked to, and that's probably the one thing I've said around many tables around this globe, is to look at each other and say, I know what you're feeling like, brother or
Right.
sister.
Yeah. And having the wherewithal to have that sort of empathy, because then people want to talk about whose trauma is worse, right? And that's not the conversation that we're trying to have. Like, the Jewish trauma is worse than the Black trauma, and the Black trauma is worse than the Irish trauma, and the Irish trauma is worse than, you know what I mean? So it's like,
But I sat with rabbis, and a rabbi has said to me, I know your trauma is bad, but how do we heal?
yeah.
He didn't say, how do you heal? How do we heal? And
Yeah.
only people who have compassion. And people look at it like, well, I'm kind. No, I didn't say you were kind. I'm not saying compassion is different than kind.
It is.
Compassion, you have to bake it like a cake. And sometimes your cake isn't all that tasty. So your compassion may have to be redone.
Yeah.
And put in
Yeah.
different ingredients, maybe the same ingredients, just not so much this.
Right. And
So,
compassion is also an action.
yeah.
There's something you do when you're compassionate. When you show compassion, it's show compassion. So and when we talk about transformation, especially manifestation, as a collective, there's so much that we could do once we get on that page. But I think that before we get there as a human, the human transformation, because some of us that are doing the work, it holds us accountable, right?
Right.
So although I'm having a Black experience in this country, I'm also having an experience where I meet people spiritually on a different level. I see them first. What happens is, as a Black person, first you see people as their color, and then you delve into the spirit piece. But the more you do the work, you then begin to see them spiritually first, and then you see their color or their circumstances. And I think if enough of us were collective, because we know, it is like we know prayer works, that same collective energy works. And the more we can get people in alignment with that, then the more that we can feel that compassion and set and have the spaces, hold the spaces for healing and transformation, right?
Right.
Because at the rate we're going,
well,
you know,
why we have Black on Black crime, because the rate we're going, it's working. It's working for the other.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we have Black on Black crime, and the way that it shows up the way that it does, and I don't know, it's there's a lot of work to do. And I think the burden of I think it can't feel like a burden.
No.
Then it takes away from, I think when it's, for myself, when I feel it getting too heavy, then I have to take care of myself, or, you know what I mean? I have to extract myself out of some of these conversations and situations, and just really realign, if you will.
But with one of the things we could do a takeaway, we're going to be ending this talk with Bridges Live, Dr. Paul and Raychelle LaBlanc. First, let's tell people what you do, because we're already at the end of this show.
I know, right?
But tell people what you do before we do the next thing I was doing.
Okay. So my name is Raychelle LaBlanc, and I'm a life and wellness coach. I'm a Reiki master. I teach meditation, and I am a nutrition therapy practitioner. And the reason that I am all of those things is because I am a firm believer that it is the alignment of mind, body, and spirit that allows us to access our internal pharmacy and heal, right? And that's not just physical, that's spiritual, that's
Right.
emotional, mental, even having had my own experiences with anxiety, depression. I've been in the entertainment business for 20 years. And I thought that was what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. And I learned that it was a conduit for me to do the work that I'm doing now, which I believe is my life's work. And because I'm engulfed and engaged in my life's work every single day, it frees me up to do things I'm curious about, like, oh, I wonder if I could be a bartender. I wonder if I could, it frees you up, right? When you're in alignment. So, but
And I have to tell you, I do have my mixology. I have to let you know, I am a licensed mixologist. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Like freeze you up. Yeah, maybe I should take these classes. I absolutely did it.
I never waitressed before. I love to wait, like it just frees you up, So currently I have a couple of things that I'm offering for clients, anyone that's dealing with depression, anxiety. I do offer free call for them, especially if they're having current crisis, just to kind of walk them through a little bit, get them back on level ground, if you will. And then I have a 8-series chakra workshop that I do for my coaching clients. Each call, we deal with a specific chakra and talk about ways to keep it open, how to align it, what it's connected to. When this is chronically closed, what does it look like in your life? And, anything from color to food, oils, stones, whatever.
So do they reach your email, call you, what?
Yeah. They can email me at raychelleleblanc@gmail.com. Yeah. And my website is the same, raychelleleblanc.com. Everything is under my name. On social media, I'm Coach Raychelle on Instagram. They can inbox me there as well. But yeah, it's all available. I'm also in the process of finishing up a workshop for rewriting your story for transformation, right? Manifest that. So a lot of times we get stuck, right? Like we talked about, people project their stuff onto you, and we don't know how to refuse that as young people. So we start to map it on as our definition. And here we are, 20 years later, still holding on to these ideas that someone told us when we were 5 or 6 or 7. So inner child work is a part of that work. We do a little bit of that so that we don't have 10 and 15-year-olds raising children in relationships and running classrooms and businesses, right?
Or 35 or 26, 35-year-olds who are stuck at 11 and 15.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I mean when you have 11-year-olds raising children and in a relationship, trying to communicate as an adult, but your stuff is, all over the place. So, you got 10-year-old raising children, right? So
we used to say back in my day, that stuff is whack.
That stuff is whack. Yeah. You're telling on yourself.
I know, but if it's whack, it's whack.
It's whack. Sometimes it just still applies, right? Whack is whack. Yeah, for sure.
Whack is whack. Yeah. So if people get a takeaway from this, I'm going to say we have to have the conversation. And the conversation has to come from more of a question than a complete answer. Because I think
questions open you up for everything.
Because when people get stuck on an answer,
that's it.
Then it's hard to develop a conversation when you're already stuck on an answer. Because if I ask you, so what do you think about, jumping over the moon? That'll never happen. We can't jump.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, what do you think about it? And I think that says a lot about a young child when I talk to a child. Like, what do you think about being able to drive a race car? I'm unable to drive yet. Let me ask you again slowly. And then I'll say it and they say, well, I still can't drive. And then I'll say, I write it out. And then when people see it, what, right? We explain the what, you, who's the you and the I, and think. What is thinking? Does thinking have anything to do with, and people don't hear themselves because they're not thinking.
And they're also very committed to the stories already. So
Okay.
so it's on repeat, right?
Right.
And then as little people, when someone tells you what you can't do, then you start to say what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your conversation, so now that's what that's doing, is creating your filters.
Mm-hmm.
You see everything through those filters, right? And that's where it starts. That's why inner child work is so important.
Yep.
It's important. Yeah.
Many blessings to you, Raychelle. I will talk to you later. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you for, I really appreciate chatting with you today.
And we need to I'm going to get you on another show to have that other conversation about the house and the field. Okay. So trust me, we're going to get on that one too. Have more of a panel.
Oh, let's do it. I have to do a little bit of I'll do my research.
with some opposition. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Talk to you soon.